8, 9, 10, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mic check. 1, 2. Can you guys hear back here? Can you hear the microphone back here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Mic check. 1, 2, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mic check. 1, 2, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 2, 1. Mic check. Excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. One, two, three, four, five, six, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 2, 1. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 2, 1.
1, 2. You get to follow me, Gov. You get to follow me. He's got his coffee pot with him, so does anybody need any more coffee? Yeah. Well, Governor, it's great to have you here. As some of you may or may not know, I'm former U.S. Senator David Carnes. Served in Nebraska and in Washington. And it's my honor to introduce the Governor of New Jersey here. And Chris, I'm going to mention a couple things about a gentleman, the last governor I worked for, a gentleman named Ronald Reagan. I worked in the Reagan White House. And it's one of the reasons that I'm so supportive of what you bring to you bring to the state of New Jersey, you bring to our country, and we'll bring as the next president of the United States. When I had a chance to serve with Ronald Reagan, I was in his first term in 1981. If you remember, the country was a mess at that time. Some of you may recall we had Iranian hostages for 440 days. We had gas lines, and we had a crime rate of 14%. Many people felt that the country was too complicated, the world was too complicated for anyone to actually lead a country like the United States in the world. But one of the things that Ronald Reagan used to speak to me about was that he said, as a governor of a large state, California, where I had a Democratic-controlled legislature, and the economy was very troubled, but nonetheless was important. He said, I learned a lot. He said, 20 years before, I wanted to be president. This is Ronald Reagan. And he said, but I realized I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the wisdom, which led to judgment, which led to leadership, which led to respect. So one of the reasons that I think governors are so important for our country is because they actually have run something. They've had to govern. They haven't had just to say policy, but they've had to actually lead. So when I look at Governor Christie, I see a person who brings wonderful experience to this position as a U.S. attorney, as someone who has led a state, a large state, a blue state, I might add, and has been successful. As a result of that experience, he has gained a lot of wisdom. And with wisdom comes judgment. And there's no way that a president of the United States can be prepared for that position. Who would have ever expected to have an ISIS threat in our world? So as President Reagan used to say, I learned a great deal over his lifetime, particularly being governor of a large state. So what I see in Chris Christie is a person who brings experience, wisdom. With that comes judgment. With judgment comes the ability to lead. And with leadership is what we need in this country and the world more than anything else, is a person who will generate respect for the United States and for the people of this country. So I look at Governor Christie as a person who fits the mold of a gentleman that I have great respect for and had the honor to serve for 4 years in Washington, Ronald Reagan. So it's big shoes to fill, Governor, but I look at Governor Christie as a worker, as a doer, as a thoughtful pragmatist, and a person, most important, is conservative that's going to bring this country to where it needs to be. So, Governor, it's my honor today to introduce you to these wonderful folks who've been drinking coffee. And if any of them have to get up and go to the restroom, they're excused in advance. But it's my honor to introduce you. Welcome to Iowa from a Nebraskan. Yeah.
Senator, thank you. I have to tell you, when you get an introduction like that and you're compared to Ronald Reagan 2 weeks before the Iowa caucuses, I should just sit down and have breakfast and be done, right? I can only go downhill from there, Senator. Thank you. It's an extraordinary compliment to me, and it harkens me back to my first vote. I turned 18 in September of 1980, and I sat in my dorm room late that October in 1980 at the University of Delaware and had my absentee ballot. And I got the opportunity to vote for the very first time, and I voted for Ronald Reagan for president. And in all the years since then, I've been able to tell people how proud I am of my first vote, and that I voted for someone who restored our country, both not only its economic and military strength, but its pride in itself and the role that it plays in the world. And so to stand here this morning and to be introduced by someone who knew President Reagan, who worked for President Reagan, and to be compared in any way to Ronald Reagan is a great day for me. So no matter what happens to me the rest of the day, I'm going to have a good day, for sure. I also want to thank the folks at the Village Inn. This has become my favorite place in Iowa, the Village Inn. You know, ask my staff, wherever we go, I want to know, is there a Village Inn so I can go there and eat? Because I know the food's going to be really good, and the service is going to be really good, and the folks are going to be incredibly friendly. And so I'm glad that on my last day in Iowa on this trip, and I'll be back again right before the debate next week, that I'm doing a town hall meeting at the Village Inn. It's the first time I've ever done this, so I usually am just sitting here and eating, so this is good. I'm glad for all of you to be here, too, and I thank the folks from the Village Inn for letting me come and invade this morning, not just to eat, but to also talk to all of you. 2 weeks from today, we will be out of your hair, off your television sets, out of your mailboxes, and everywhere else, and we'll be moving on to the next state. But in these 2 weeks, you have extraordinarily important work to do. And if you don't believe how important you are, remember this. This race started with 17 people. It's now down to 12 people. And I guarantee you by the time Iowa and New Hampshire are done on February 1st and February 9th, this race will be down to 4 or 5 people. So Iowans are making a selection, a huge selection for the rest of the country. You're going to help to determine who the folks in the other 48 states even have a chance to choose from. And so I know you understand this obligation and this commitment that you have to our country very well, because I've told folks over and over again, if you get any type of cynicism about our democracy, come to Iowa and New Hampshire. That folks showing up for the last year at events put on by me and other candidates so that you could listen, you could ask questions, you could look us in the eye, and you could make a judgment about our character and our ability to be able to do this job. And so with 2 weeks to go, I'm really excited about the fact that Iowans will make a really informed and smart choice 2 weeks from tonight. And we need to make it. I don't know if you've heard the president last night or Secretary Kerry today saying that the return of our hostages from Iran is a triumph of smart diplomacy. I never thought that paying ransom would be called smart diplomacy. As a senator knows very well, Ronald Reagan said, "We will not negotiate with terrorists." And what happened? Jimmy Carter negotiated with terrorists for nearly 2 years after our hostages were taken. And he never got them returned home because they knew they were dealing with someone who was weak and who they could push around. I never have thought it's any coincidence that as soon as Ronald Reagan took his hand off the Bible on January 20th, 1981, that those hostages were released from Iran that very moment. They knew that a president was coming into office who would not pay ransom. A president was coming into office who would use the full force of America's military and its relationships around the world to make sure that its citizens were returned home safely. I think it's a wonderful thing for the families of those Americans who have been returned home. And we pray for their health and for a wonderful return home to their family and their friends. But we should never, ever pay ransom to hostages, for hostages. Never, ever do that. Because every American that's abroad now, every American that's abroad is now in more danger today than they were before, because they know that they have a president in the Oval Office and a Secretary of State who is willing to pay ransom for hostages. And this is just weakening America even more. As if the Iran nuclear deal didn't weaken us more, our ridiculous non-response to their ballistic missile tests, our failure to intervene in Syria after the president promised he would, his awful policy in Libya, which has now left that country in tatters, and his complete underevaluation of the threat of radical jihadist terrorism, which he again on Tuesday night in his State of the Union address, he called ISIS a bunch of guys with beards and guns on the back of a truck. Now, I wonder if the president would be willing to get on Air Force One and fly to Paris and see the families of the 130 loved ones who were murdered and tell those survivors that these guys are just folks with beards on the back of pickup trucks with guns. They're a lot more than that. Maybe he would go and tell the families in San Bernardino, the 14 people who were killed there, tell their families that that's all these guys are. Maybe he'll go to Jakarta in Indonesia, where ISIS has struck and killed again. Maybe in Turkey, where ISIS struck and killed again. Maybe he'll go to all those families and just tell them they're overreacting. Like he tells the American people, you're overreacting. He says you're overreacting to terrorism because you watch too much cable news. That's a serious comment from a president of the United States. I mean, I watched that State of the Union speech on Tuesday night, and I said on Thursday at the debate, I felt like I was watching Story Time with Barack Obama. You know? I have 4 kids. We've all had Story Time, right? You know, those Dr. Seuss books or Good Night Moon. You know, that's what I felt like I was listening to. This is a guy who lives in a fantasy land where he says everything's great in America and everything's great around the world. And he doesn't understand why we don't see it. The theme of this administration should be, do you believe me or your lying eyes? Because we all see what we see, everybody except the president. And here's the worst news for us now. Anybody watch that Democratic debate last night? Okay. I tortured myself. After a full day of work here in Iowa, I did 2 town hall meetings yesterday. I did one in Lamar's. I did one in Sioux City. Did an event in Milford yesterday morning. So I worked all day yesterday. I came back to my hotel room last night, and, you know, I was back and forth thinking, do I just turn on ESPN and relax? You're right, I should have. Or do I do the responsible thing as a candidate for president of the United States and watch the Democratic debate? So I'm an oldest child, so I did the responsible thing, and I turned it on. Here's what I learned last night. If there was any doubt left that Hillary Clinton would be nothing more than a 3rd term of Barack Obama, she put it to rest last night, didn't she? She couldn't have snuggled up to him more, could she? Every answer, she was like, and that's the way President Obama has done it. I'm going to do it the way President Obama has done it. And we should support what President Obama has done. And Senator Sanders doesn't support President Obama enough. I mean, it is clear now she has decided that if there was ever anything inside Hillary Clinton that was different than Barack Obama, if there ever was, it's gone. She's exorcised it. She must have had an exorcism somewhere, and any of her own personality that was left has gone out of there, and now she is occupying the mind and body of Barack Obama. Because that's all I heard last night. But I was waiting to hear like one original idea from Hillary Clinton, and it never came. Every one of them was Barack Obama's ideas. So if you like the last 7 years of what's happened here, she is the person to give you 4 more of them. Absolutely, no doubt about it. She confirmed it last night. And I can't wait to be on the stage with her in September to remind her over and over and over again that she is nothing more than a less experienced Barack Obama. Because at least Barack Obama has had the presidency for the last 7 years. Hillary Clinton has never run anything of any consequence. You know, she was a United States senator, and that's not training you to become president of the United States. And then she was Secretary of State. And it seems like what she was more expert there was on emails than she was on anything else. And removing classified markings from emails and setting up personal email servers in her basement so that she could violate the law. This Justice Department prosecuted David Petraeus, a great American hero, for the mishandling of classified information. I hope that Attorney General Lynch has the same guts and courage to prosecute Hillary Clinton for doing stuff that was even worse. That's the experience she's got. And so I'm glad I watched it last night. I watched ESPN afterwards. Don't worry about it. But I'm glad I watched it last night because it makes my mission as the Republican candidate for President of the United States even clearer. I need to stop a third Barack Obama term, and I need your help to stop a third Barack Obama term because this country can't survive 12 years of those policies. 8 years will have been bad enough. And one last thing, and then I want to take your questions on whatever is on your mind. You know, when we're talking about Barack Obama, we know, so many of us in this country, even some who may have voted for him, know that they made a big mistake in 2008. Yeah, he's a charming guy, the greatest reader of a teleprompter I've ever seen. You know, hope and change. Who can disagree with that? Now we can, because we know what hope and change really was. But back then, you know, he was a charming fella. But we should have looked a little more closely. First-term United States Senator who had never managed anything in his life bigger than a 30-person Senate staff. And we put him in charge of the most complex government the world has ever known. And we wonder why things aren't working. We wonder why the VA is not working and is making lives more and more difficult every day for veterans who we promised to give health care to and who have been denied that health care because of the incompetence and the lying of the Veterans Administration. We wonder why the entire health care system has gotten messed up. We wonder why America's position in the world has been diminished. We wonder why our military has been diminished. We wonder why we have the federal government knee-deep in our educational choices for our kids in our neighborhoods and our communities. Well, because we put someone in charge who had never run anything before. And the senator talked about President Reagan in his introduction, that those 8 years he spent as governor of California taught him an enormous amount about how to run a big and complex enterprise. Well, it's done the same thing for me. I spent 7 years as the U.S. attorney running one of the largest prosecuting offices in the country for 7 years, fighting terrorism. I was named U.S. attorney on September 10th, 2001. September 10th, 2001. And the next day, that job that I accepted on the 10th changed a heck of a lot the next day. And for those years, we did major cases, intercepting terrorism, arresting terrorists, prosecuting them, convicting them, and sending them to jail for the rest of their lives. No one else in the race has that experience. No one has the experience that I have of fighting terrorism on the ground, using those tools, and protecting Americans. See, what happened in Boston was a failure. When we don't catch them beforehand and they kill and maim people, that's a failure, even if we catch them afterwards. We need to catch them before they strike. And that's why we need to have greater intelligence, greater law enforcement intelligence that allows us to connect those dots and get in there before they act. Because if a Center for the Developmentally Disabled in San Bernardino, California, is a target for terrorism, that means any place in America is a target for terrorism. And we need a president who understands that and knows how to use those tools. And I've learned a lot as governor of New Jersey. I've learned that you got to work with Democrats. Like Ronald Reagan, I've had a Democratic legislature every minute of every day of my governorship. And believe me, they don't wake up in the morning and say to themselves, how are we going to make the governor happy today? How can we help him to move his agenda forward? Right? They're opposite of us. But I've learned to work with them, and we've achieved extraordinary things in New Jersey, even with a Democratic legislature, because as governor, it's your job to figure it out. That's what you send us there for. Not to hold our breath and stand in the corner and put out press releases, but to get things done. And that's what I've done in New Jersey over and over again. Now, I don't give in on anything that's a matter of principle. For instance, Americans for Tax Reform have now said that I've vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history. Now, of course, I have to thank my liberal legislature for that, because if they didn't send me the tax increases, I couldn't veto them. But the fact is, I've stood up every time against tax increases in our state. So on matters of principle, I won't give in. But I'm not the only person in the building with principle. Other people believe in things too, and you have to figure out ways to find compromise and get things done. And that's what we're so frustrated about in Washington, isn't it? They get nothing done. Nothing done. I mean, we have a candidate for president, Senator Rubio, who doesn't even show up to work anymore because he says his vote doesn't matter. Well, quit then, man. If your vote doesn't matter, quit. I mean, I don't care that he's running for president and he's not showing up. That's fine. That's his choice. But then don't tell me your vote doesn't matter. He said last week that senators and congressmen are not the solution to America's problem. I agree. I agree. Senators and congressmen are not the solution to America's problem. And we certainly don't need to send a first-term senator again to the Oval Office, do we? I mean, why would we do that again? We just lived through 7 years of that. And just because you philosophically agree with someone more doesn't make them any more prepared to do the job. We need someone who's ready on the first day to sit in that chair and not spin around and say, gee whiz, isn't it cool I'm president? All right? Big wide eyes. Look at me. Hey, Mom, I became president. We need someone who sits in that chair the first day and says, this chair feels familiar. It's not the same as the chair I sat in before, but it's like it. And I know the way decisions come in that office. It's not like when you're in the Senate. In the Senate, it's like being in school. Right? They tell you where to go, what time to show up. They tell you where to sit. They give you a list of questions, and you answer them yes or no. Then they tell you when recess is, and then you get to leave. Right? I mean, that's what it's like. Now, that's fine. That's a role and a function in our government, but it doesn't prepare you for being president. Because I can tell you as governor, that's not what happens. I don't get a schedule every day that tells me where to sit and what to do and what questions I'm going to get. The stuff comes flying in the door, and things happen in your state, and you've got to be in charge of making it right. And there's no owner's manual in the top drawer of the desk when you get there. There's no one to teach you. There's no on-the-job training. You've got to be ready. And when Hurricane Sandy hit my state, and 365,000 homes were destroyed in 24 hours, and 75% of my state was without power, and we had no water treatment or wastewater treatment plants that worked, when we only had 51 gas stations operational for a state of 8.9 million people, when every school was closed, when every major state highway was blocked. They give you that briefing the day after the storm, sitting at a table, and then you know what happens? Everybody keeps quiet and stares at you. They say, okay, Governor, what are we going to do? Those are the things that get you ready to be President of the United States, not a roll call vote in the United States Senate. And certainly not showing up for work even when we're voting on a $1.15 trillion budget. And it certainly doesn't give you a lot of hope when somebody who ran for a job and said they would do it tells you later the job is worthless, I'm not showing up, and my vote doesn't matter. Listen, I don't know that Senator Rubio really meant that, but it is a symbol of his inexperience to even say something like that to the American people when you're running for president. And we can't put up with another inexperienced first-term United States senator in the White House. So whether you like him or not, agree with him or not, I like Marco Rubio. But heck, man, he's not ready. You know it and I know it. And we cannot afford, by the way, forget once we get to the White House, remember, you got to get there first. And we saw who's standing between us and the White House last night on that television set. And man, you don't want someone on that stage with her next September who is not ready to take her on, who is not used to taking the incoming. You don't want someone up there with a script who looks like a deer in the headlights. You want someone who's going to actually have been there before, have taken the incoming. I've taken the incoming from the toughest, most liberal media market in America. Every day, the New York Times in my press gaggle. How'd you like that? As a conservative Republican, every day being assaulted by the media in New York City. Believe me, whatever Hillary Clinton throws at me on that stage next September will not faze me in the least. And you know the mud will be coming from her, and you want someone who can get through that mud and win that election. Because there's no silver medals in this one, everybody. It's not like the pageant we run in my state, the Miss America pageant, where there's a first runner-up. And if for some reason Miss America can't serve, the first runner-up steps in. When you're first runner-up in the presidential race, you go home. You go home. We need someone who knows how to win and can win, and then once they get to the White House, has had a job like that before so they can be ready to serve. So any comparison that someone who knew Ronald Reagan makes between me and Ronald Reagan is a great day for me, but also a day that lets you think as well. The greatest presidents we've had in the last century have all been governors. Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, Ronald Reagan, all of the presidents who have been great presidents in the last century, as this government's gotten bigger and more complex, have been governors. Let's not make the same mistake we made 7 years ago. So here's the thing. My town hall meetings in Iowa, there's only one rule. Just so you know, I've done 134 town hall meetings as governor of New Jersey. In New Jersey, there's 4 rules. Here in Iowa, there's only one. That will tell you the difference between Iowa and New Jersey. I need 4 rules to keep things in control in New Jersey at town hall meetings, but Iowa, only one rule. So I thank you people for that. Here's the thing. One rule. You raise your hand and ask questions. I answer them. You don't have to write them down beforehand. I don't have to know what you're going to ask me about. It's my job to be able to stand up here and answer your questions, look you in the eye, and tell you what I think. You may like it, you may not like it, but you will not be confused when I'm done. You understand what I believe and what I think, and I think we need that from a president. So raise your hands. Whoever's ready, I'm ready. Yes, sir, right there.
What is important? I'm sorry. It's extremely important, obviously, that we elect a Republican president. But more so, I think, is the Supreme Court, which is going to have a major impact on all of our lives and our children and our grandchildren. And I'd just like to hear a little bit about your philosophy and what you intend to do, given the opportunity to appoint 3 or 4 justices to the U.S. Supreme Court.
I'll tell you 2 things that would be my guiding principle. The first is that any justice I appoint to the United States Supreme Court has to know that their job is to interpret the law, not to make the law. They're not legislators from the bench. The legislators are the people who are elected, and the president who gets to sign those laws. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I would get away from what Republicans have done over the last couple of times, which is look for people with no paper trail. Right? You've heard this before. We want to look for someone with no paper trail so that they can't be cross-examined on their paper trail. I think that's the wrong way to do it. Here's what I would do. If you're looking for the kind of judge I would appoint, look at Justice Sam Alito. He had my job in New Jersey before me. He was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. Ronald Reagan appointed him to the bench and appointed him U.S. Attorney. George Bush 41 appointed him to the bench. He was on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, a true, stalwart, conservative, not over the top, not with big flowery words. Every day, though, fighting for the conservative cause. I would go to my friend Sam Alito, who I know well, and I'd say to him, Sam, tell me who the best judges in the circuit courts around the country are, the most reliable ones, who are conservatives and believe like you and I do, that the bench has no business writing the laws, that they should just be interpreting them. Who are the people that you see their opinions come up to the Supreme Court and you say, the paper trail tells me that this person will do the same thing on the Supreme Court that they've done on the circuit court. Those are the kind of people I'm going to pick. I don't want to take a chance. George Bush 41 put David Souter on the bench because he had no paper trail. Didn't work out for us. We can't afford that kind of mistake because, as you know, if you've got 3 or 4 selections, that's going to absolutely tip the balance of the court one way or the other. And we need to make sure we get it right. And the only way to make sure you get it right is to pick someone who has a paper trail, a history of doing the right thing on conservative causes, and then you go and fight for them on Capitol Hill and do everything you can to get them confirmed. That's the way I would do it. And I want to remind you one thing about New Jersey. When I became governor of New Jersey, at a 7-person court, we had 1 Republican. We now have 3 rather than 1, because every one of those openings that I've had a chance to fill, I filled with a Republican. Had to make a deal with the Democrats, of course, because they had a Democratic Senate, reappoint one of their Democrats. But we now have 3 Republicans instead of 1. And it's made a huge difference on our court. You can make a big difference by standing by your principles and appointing people who you really believe in. but also who have a record. It's too big a job to take a roll of the dice and take someone's word for it, because when they get up there, sometimes they start drinking that water and all of a sudden they see things differently. I want someone who's got a history of doing it the right way, and that's the kind of people that I would appoint to the bench. And if you're interested in reading those kind of things, just pull a couple of opinions from Justice Alito. You'll see what kind of justice I would appoint to the court. All the way in the back in the red hat, sir.
Thank you, Governor. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Welcome to Council Bluffs.
Happy to be back.
Glad to have you here. You said that you're a man of principles. You've stated that several times. I'm wondering what principle you were upholding when you guaranteed $261 million loans for the failing Revel Casino in New Jersey.
Well, we didn't guarantee the loans, sir. You misunderstand it. Here's what we said.
Did the taxpayers get their money back?
The taxpayers never spent a nickel, and that's why you misunderstand what happened. Here's what we did. We gave tax incentives to the Revel Casino that if they ever made money, and they reached certain goals of employing a certain number of people in New Jersey, then they could access those tax incentives. They never made money, and they never reached the employment goals, so they never took one nickel of that money off the table. So the taxpayers of New Jersey never paid a nickel for the Revel Hotel and Casino because it did not meet the promises that it made to the state. It had to employ a certain number of folks, and it had to make a profit. It never made a profit, and it didn't employ those folks. Now, if they had made those profits and had employed those folks, that would have been a great deal for the state of New Jersey, because we would have more people working and paying taxes into the system, and we would have been getting taxes over and above the incentives that we gave them. They never met their goals. And so that's why I negotiated a good deal. It wasn't, here's the money and we're going to take it on faith. No. It was, you don't get any of the money off the table unless you become a profitable enterprise in our state and you employ a certain number of folks in our state. Neither one of those goals were ever met, so they never took any of the money off the table. So it didn't cost the taxpayers a nickel.
What did you get in return for that?
Well, I got nothing in return for that, and nor did they get anything. It was the kind of deal that you want to make. Everybody's got to live up to their parts of the bargain. We would have given them the tax incentives if, in fact, they had met the employment goals and met the profit goals. When they didn't, we gave them nothing, and I got nothing. So, I took a chance. But in the end, the chance that I took didn't cost us anything. It did not cost us a thing and has not cost us a thing to this moment in time, and will never cost us a thing unless Revel reopens, employs a certain number of folks, and becomes profitable to the level that they promised us they would. So, it wasn't any kind of deal that cost the taxpayers even one nickel in New Jersey. It has not cost them a nickel. And that's the kind of deals I'll negotiate as president as well. If people meet their things and things are working right for America, more people are employed, and we're making more money and they're paying more taxes, great. But not if you don't meet your promises.
The casino industry was failing back then. In Nevada, a similar project called Echelon started in 2006 and folded in 2008 because the market wasn't there.
Right.
The market continues to not be there to that day, so I'm still curious as to why there was any impetus to backing a private enterprise that was failing in other parts of the country, why to back it in New Jersey?
First of all, New Jersey has the second most successful gaming industry in the country, only behind Nevada. And so, the casino industry is not failing in New Jersey. The casino industry is now much more competitive. When Atlantic City opened and started, we were the only folks east of the Mississippi who had casino gaming. Now you have 40-plus states that have casino gaming. So we have fewer casinos in New Jersey now than we did before. But it doesn't mean that Revel couldn't have been successful. And in the end, I don't understand your objection. It did not cost the taxpayers a nickel. The people who lost money in that deal were the private investors who decided to take the risk. They lost the money. That's what our private enterprise system is all about. The people who took the risk and believed that Revel could be successful lost the money. The deal I made with them was, unless you are successful, have reached your employment goals and reached your profit goals, you don't get a nickel of tax incentives from the taxpayers. I would think that someone who's favoring private enterprise and encouraging private enterprise would like a deal like that. Because in the end, everybody wins. Well, listen, that's your philosophy, but I will tell you that tax incentives are given across this country, in this state, and in every the other states to try to compete with other states to bring people in and to be able to do what you need to do to create jobs. But it's the kind of tax incentive deal that you negotiate which is important. If it's a giveaway up front where you just hand the money before they deliver, I disagree with that. But if it's a deal that says if you deliver, we'll deliver, and then everybody wins, I don't have a problem with that kind of deal. All right. You're welcome. Sir, here, you can take mine.
Okay, I'll take your mic, and then I promise I'll give it back.
Okay.
In the earlier cycles after the recession in 2008, everybody talked about reducing the size of government, and in all of the things that we watch, we don't hear people talking about how are you actually going to accomplish it. Would you speak to, as an executive who's actually had to deal with that, if you get control of the U.S. government as the President of the United States to lead us, how would you specifically deal with reducing the deficit that's going to make everything else we talk about irrelevant if we don't fix it?
Sure. I'll tell you about what I've done in New Jersey and then what I plan for the federal government. In New Jersey, when I became governor, we had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget. So a 40+% deficit on the budget. So here's what we did. I went in, and in the first 6 weeks of my term, 3 days a week for the first 6 weeks, I met with the state treasurer, and we literally went through the budget line by line. And I know you people use that term all the time, but I actually did it. Line by line, and they'd say, okay, Governor, and they'd tell me what it was. I'd have a description of it, and they'd say, stay or go, stay or go. We cut 800 programs from the state budget. 800 programs from the state budget. Now, believe me, that was no fun because every one of those programs had a constituency, every one of them. And I got the letters and the emails and the phone calls and the protests on the steps of the Capitol because, you know, when you go up to anybody, they say, cut government, cut the government. I'm like, okay, I'm going to cut this program. And he says to me, well, wait a second. That program actually is one I use and I think is very good, but the program this guy likes over here, a complete waste. Go get that one, Governor, you know? Everybody has that mode in them, right? So we just did it. And what you got to do is put the blinders on and just say, you know what? The fiscal problem is too big to be concerned about everybody's feelings on this. You got to learn early on that you're not running for prom king, right? You're governor. You're not prom king. You're not worried about being Mr. Popular, okay? You got to do the job. So that's what we did there. And what have been the results of that? Not only have we balanced 6 budgets in a row without any new taxes in New Jersey or any higher taxes in New Jersey, but also we have 10,000 fewer employees on the state payroll today than the day I became governor. And I didn't lay anybody off. I did it all by attrition. As people retired, I said to our folks running our cabinet departments, make do with less. Consolidate, reorganize, make do with less. And 10,000 fewer employees today than the day I became governor. And to give you some sense of scope on that, that means we've gone from about 68,000 employees in the state government down to 58,000 employees. So a significant cut in the number of employees. I think you have to take the same kind of approach in the federal government, but that won't even begin to solve the problem in terms of cutting programs from the budget. You got to do that. But you also have to deal with the one thing that nobody in this race, except for me, wants to talk about, and that's entitlement reform. 71 cents of every dollar, 71 cents of every dollar the federal government spends today are spent on entitlements and debt service. 71 cents of every dollar. So you want to get at the deficit and the long-term debt? Why are we arguing over the 29 cents? But we're not even talking about the 71 cents. And if you think I'm kidding, think just back a few days ago to the debate on Thursday night. Maria Bartiromo directly asked Senator Rubio, what's your plan on entitlements? Senator Rubio's answer was on his tax reform plan. So I stand next to him thinking, well, that didn't answer the question. So then she went to Senator Cruz and asked him about his plan for entitlement reform. And what did he answer? He gave his tax reform plan. Then Senator Rubio started to respond to Senator Cruz's tax plan about what was wrong with that. And you might remember that I interrupted. I said, excuse me, can I interrupt this debate on the floor of the United States Senate to actually answer the question that you asked? because I'm the only person in this race who has put forward a detailed entitlement reform plan, and I did it in April. You know why no one else wants to deal with it? Because it's too hard. Because no one wants to talk about Social Security and Medicare. God forbid. Don't talk about it. They tell you it's the third rail of American politics. Well, we're touching the third rail of American politics because we have to. Because if we don't, Social Security and Medicare will go insolvent, and the United States government will just run up more debt. So I'll go over 4 points of my 12-point plan because I don't want, despite all the coffee, I don't want people to go under here and fall asleep, all right? I need to keep you awake. But go to chrischristie.com, and you'll have the entire 12-point plan, which has been scored by the Congressional Budget Office to save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. $1 trillion. But here are 4 steps. 2 on Social Security, 2 on Medicare. Step 1, we need to raise the Social Security retirement age. I hate to tell you, but we have to. You know why? Because we're all living longer. The average life expectancy of a woman in America today is 83. The average life expectancy for a man is 79. When these programs were developed, the average life expectancy was in the mid-60s. We have to come forward and understand this. And so I say raise the retirement age 2 years and phase it in over 25 years. That means it goes up 1 month a year, every year for the next 25 years. So anybody who's on Social Security now, not affected. You're close to Social Security, you're affected by a few months, potentially. Who it's going to affect is me and these guys over here who were concerned about me watching ESPN. It's going to affect them too. But those are the folks it should affect, because by the time we get to that age, our life expectancy is going to be even longer. And the problem will be even bigger if we don't deal with it. So when I'm running against Hillary Clinton this fall and she says, Governor Christie has a Social Security plan that throws grandma off the cliff, just remember something. That cliff takes 25 years for grandma to land, okay? So it's a pretty high cliff. All right? Second, we need to means test Social Security. Now, I know that's another thing that you're not supposed to do, but here's the bottom line. There's a trust fund, Social Security trust fund, where we've been paying our money in, me and you and everybody else in this room. Every 2 weeks in your paycheck, you're paying that FICA tax. I remember when our oldest son got his first job while he was in college, and he brought home his pay stub, and he's like, what's this FICA thing? I'm like, oh, you'll learn, buddy. You'll learn. But here's the bad news. The government lied to us and stole from us. They're spending that money. They've been spending that money. They don't keep it. And all that's in the trust fund is a stack of IOUs. And so we got a problem. We're trying to balance a checkbook where there's more going out than there is coming in. You know when you're trying to balance your checkbook and there's more going out than there's coming in, there's only 2 choices. Spend less or bring in more. This is where Hillary Clinton and I will be different. Hillary Clinton's going to say, take the cap off the Social Security tax and have everybody pay Social Security tax on every nickel they make of any kind of income. All right? That's one approach. My approach is to say, if you're making more than $200,000 a year in retirement, okay, you've stopped working, and due to your investments, pension, anything that you have that produces income, not your home, but the things that produce income, if it's $200,000 a year or more, I want to ask you a question. Do you really need Social Security? If you're making $200,000 a year or more in retirement, will that check every month make a huge difference in your lifestyle or any difference in your lifestyle? I suggest to you that it won't. But I'll tell you who it will make a difference for. The folks who have worked hard and played by the rules but not saved that kind of money. And this is the difference between rent and heat and food for them. Those are the people that we got to make sure gets taken care of first. And so it's a difference of philosophy. I say, for the people who have done very well, don't give them a benefit at the end. Mrs. Clinton says, for the people who are doing very well, take more of their money now. I want to ask you a question. Remembering that these folks have lied to you and stolen from you. All right? This would be like if someone opened up a bank here in Council Bluffs. You went and deposited your money in the bank. And then the bank went belly up. And you lost some of your money. And then a year later, the guy who opened that bank in Council Bluffs comes and knocks on your front door. He says, hey, by the way, remember me? I had a bank here. I'm opening up a new bank, and I'd like your deposits. And you say, hey, wait a second. Aren't you the guy who made that bank go under, and I lost some of my money? He goes, yeah, but I've learned my lesson. Now, I know people in Iowa are really nice. I've gotten to learn that over the last 9 months, but I'm willing to bet he doesn't leave your front porch with any of your money. All right? So here's the thing. Why would we give it to the government? Give more money to the government on the promise that this time oh, I swear, this time we won't steal it. Who's going to believe that? Iowans aren't going to believe that, and neither the rest of the country. That's the choice. And I do the same thing on Medicare. On Medicare, raise the eligibility age 2 years, phase it in over 25. And for people who are making $200,000 a year in income or more, instead of subsidizing your Medicare premium 75%, which we do now, we subsidize it only 10%. Those are common sense things that we need to do. Because if you're going to deal with debt and deficit, it's like what Willie Sutton said, right? When they asked him, why does he rob banks? He says, because that's where the money is. Well, if we're spending 71 cents of every dollar on entitlements and debt service, we're not going to fix the problem by cutting back on the 29 cents. We're going to fix the problem by dealing with the 71 cents. No one else in this race has a plan. No one even has a plan. And when you watched on Thursday night, you saw that Senator Rubio and Senator Cruz would not even answer the question. Man, you better get an answer to that question from whoever you're thinking of voting for, because he is right. It is the single biggest fiscal issue in this country's future, because if we don't get that under control, when these guys grow up, we're not going to have a country to give them, because we will have spent it into oblivion. So that's my plan. It's what I've done in New Jersey to show you I mean business, and that's the plan I put forward. It's on the website. Go look at it. It's real. It's hard. No one's going to love it. But it's tough medicine that the country has to take because of the way the government has conducted itself over the last number of decades on this issue. They've lied to us and they've stolen from us. And we got to stop that. But stopping is not just enough. We got to make sure that we take benefits back from folks who really, really don't need them so that they're there for the folks who really do need them. So thanks for your question. Yes, sir. He's got a microphone for you right there.
If the president closes Gitmo, would you reopen it?
Yes.
And why?
I would reopen Gitmo if the president closed it. I don't think he's going to be able to close it because I don't think Congress is going to let him close it. But what he is doing is he's making it smaller, and he's sending terrorists back out into the world. His own director of national intelligence has said that 30% of the people he's released from Guantanamo Bay have gone back in the terrorism business. How does that make any sense? These are prisoners of war, everybody. The war of these terrorists against us, and we're letting them out after we've captured them because the president doesn't like Guantanamo Bay? I'm going to be really clear. Every one of those destructive, evil terrorists who are in Guantanamo Bay today will stay there every day that I'm president of the United States. They will not get out to kill more Americans or other human beings around the world. And if he were able to close it somehow, I would reopen it and move those people from jails in the United States where they do not belong back to Guantanamo Bay where they do belong as prisoners of war. And that's what I would do as president. Right back there. Yep.
Good morning, sir. Welcome.
Morning.
I myself am a disabled veteran. I was in Iraq 13 years ago today. Thank you. So I take this stuff pretty personal. And as you know, ISIS, they've made a threat against Bellevue, Nebraska, where I live. I live in Bellevue. And again, I take that very serious. And I'm not so much scared as I am annoyed as when I see the president apologize. So I don't really so much have a question for you, but I really want to see strength from the White House again.
Well, listen, I think that you deserve a commander-in-chief as strong as you are. And the fact is that the men and women who have gone to Iraq and Afghanistan and other points around the world to defend our freedom and the freedom and liberty of everybody else deserve a commander-in-chief whose word means something. And the biggest problem with this president is that his word is worthless. He tells the Syrians, if you use chemical weapons on your people, we will attack you. Then they use chemical weapons on their people. They kill 250,000 of their own people. And millions of others are scrambling around the world, running for their lives. And this president does nothing. He does nothing. You know, you cannot ask you and others to put your life on the line and then have the president's word not back you up. And so, listen, there's lots of different things that people will say about me and have said about me over time. But here's one thing they'll never say about me, that I'm misunderstood. I say what I believe, and I mean what I say. And then sometimes you'll agree with it, and sometimes you won't. But you will never misunderstand me, nor will our allies around the world misunderstand me, nor, more importantly than that, Will our adversaries ever misunderstand the limits of American patience? And if I were to ask you or any of your fellow servicemen and women to go and put your lives on the line, you would have two things from the Commander-in-Chief. One, a clear definition of what is the mission, and two, that every minute of every day I would have your back. Those are the two things I would do as president. And thank you for your service. All right. Yes, this guy right here.
With having a lot of students here, what is your plan for crushing student debt and future plans for that kind of thing?
All right, how old are you?
I'm 17.
All right. What year are you in school?
Senior.
All right. So you getting ready to go to college? Thinking about going to college?
Yep.
Okay. I got four things to tell you about student debt. First one is that it is unconscionable that if you take student loans that you can't refinance those loans at a lower rate. Unconscionable. We should not be making money off of you and your family. So if you have an opportunity to go to another financial institution, refinance your loan, you should be able to. As president, I would urge Congress to change that. Second, I think we need to provide young people in this country with a national service option. Beyond military service, in addition to military service, a national service option that allows them to contribute to bettering their communities, their state, and their country, and to get credit on your student loans for that. So you come out of college with some student debt, you want to work for 2 or 3 or 4 years in national service to help rebuild our country, do the things that need to be done, we'll give you credit every one of those years off of your loans so that the country gets something, your labors, your work, your ingenuity, your talent, and you get something, relief from that debt, so that when you're done, you can pick what career you want to pursue based upon your passion, not based upon how much do I have to make to cover the loans. Because I think you're going to be much better off when you get older if you're doing something you love rather than something you think you have to do just to pay the bills. Now, all of us have had jobs. I have. Others have had them over our lives where we took the job just because we had to pay the bills. Nothing wrong with that. But if you have an option, I'd rather have you have the option to pick what it is you love. Because if you do, you're going to be much better at it. And our country will be better off for your work. Now, on the other side, we got to get after these colleges and universities. I speak from personal experience. Mary Pat and I now have 2 of our children in college as we speak. And then we have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old coming up behind. Our oldest son, Andrew, is a senior at Princeton. Our oldest daughter, Sarah, is a sophomore at Notre Dame. Yeah, exactly. The total bill this year for that is $122,500. Now, I got a letter this summer, Mary Pat and I got a letter this summer from the president of Notre Dame, a guy named Father John Jenkins. Wonderful guy. First paragraph is something like this. Not exactly it, but it was something like this. Dear parents, we want to thank you for the blessing you've bestowed upon us by entrusting the souls of your children to our care for their education over the next number of years. Well, after that, from a priest who's the president of Notre Dame, right? If you close your eyes, you can hear the theme from Rudy playing in the background, right? Right? Close your eyes, you can see Touchdown Jesus and the Golden Dome, right? Your heart's pounding. For any of you in this room right now who are Catholics, you know what the next paragraph is. It's the money paragraph, baby. Because these priests know better than anybody how to separate you from your money. So they get the heart beating first, and then they give you the money paragraph. And the money paragraph was, that's why we're pleased to inform you, that tuition this year is increasing only 3.9%. Now remember, this is in a 1% inflation world. 3.9%. And that leaves this fact, that it was the lowest annual tuition increase at Notre Dame in 40 years. 3.9%. So, if we were to make this decision like we make every other decision in life about the expenditure of money, you know, we decide, okay, is what we're looking to buy and what it costs a value for what we're paying. You might or might not decide that $62,500 a year for Notre Dame is worth it or not. But imagine if I call my 19-year-old daughter downstairs, the one who texts me pictures as she walks around campus. Look how beautiful the campus looks today, Dad. Here are my pictures from me at the football game in the student section. Isn't this an amazing place, right? I call her downstairs. I say to her, Sarah, listen, Mom and I have figured this out, and we just don't think that Notre Dame is a value anymore, and so we're going to send you someplace else. Now, for any of you who currently have or have had 19-year-old daughters, tell me how you think that would go. I think after the crying, the foot stamping, the door slamming, and the "you're ruining my life" conversation, here's what would happen. Mary Pat and I would sit around that kitchen table like many of you would and say, how can we figure out a way to send her back? Here's the problem. The colleges and universities know that too. They know that we'll borrow, beg, steal for our kids. And that all we want for them is a great education and for them to be happy. That's how they got us. Because there are no market forces then on these prices. None. Because we don't do it. Because we can't. We simply can't. And unless we're forced to, we don't. And they know that. So here are the two things I would do. First thing is, don't you think they should have to tell us exactly what they're spending their money on? Like, I have to tell you the truth. Today at the Village Inn, I've eaten here a lot. I've gotten many checks here. When you get the check, it lists everything you've had and what the price is of each one of those things. If the Village Inn came to you and dumped a check on your table that said food, $40, right? You'd call the waiter or waitress over. You'd say, excuse me, could you detail for me here exactly what everybody had and how much it cost? I just paid the second semester bill for Princeton before I left to come to Iowa at the beginning of the week. It's 3 lines. 3 lines. It says tuition, room and board, other fees. It's 3 lines. Other fees. 20. Well, what are they? That's my point. This man is on the game right now. He's on his game. Other fees, $29,500. I'm like, okay. So, do I, the Village Inn for $40, I'd call him over and say, hey, what is this? $29,500. I go, where do I send the check? I write the check. Here we go. Let's go. Let's pay it, right? They need to tell us what they're spending their money on because I got to tell you the truth. If they did, we'd be outraged and they'd be embarrassed. I talked about this before. There is an epidemic in America in college campuses. You may not know this. There's an epidemic of rock climbing walls. Rock climbing walls. Now, you think I'm kidding, right? My daughter at Notre Dame told me that they have 2 rock climbing walls at Notre Dame. Here's one thing I know about my daughter for sure. She will never climb any of those walls. No chance. I know my daughter, not happening, right? So I hear about this from her, so I come to Ames. And I go to Iowa State University to give a speech on education, and I ask the students who are there, you guys have rock climbing walls here? They go, oh, yeah, we got rock climbing walls at Iowa State. I go, well, I could kind of see that. You don't have a lot of rocks here in Iowa. All right, not a lot of places for them to climb here in Iowa. So, all right, maybe I could go for a rock climbing wall at Iowa State, maybe. But then I went to the University of New Hampshire. And I asked the folks at University of New Hampshire, do you have a rock climbing wall? They said, oh, sure, we've got rock climbing walls. I'm like, you have rocks. You're the granite state. You have rocks everywhere. There's mountains everywhere in New Hampshire. Go outside and climb the rocks. You want to climb rocks. Why are we building rocks inside for you to climb when you could just go outside and climb the rocks? Now, it's a silly example. And by the way, when I did this, the press then wrote a story, Christie's assault on college fitness. Now look at me, everybody. I've assaulted fitness in many ways over the course of my life. This was not one of them. But I use that as an example. If they start to tell us all the different things that they're spending money on, the buildings they're building that are just monuments to somebody's ego, the 44 vice presidents in charge of paperwork, all the different things that they do, they're going to be embarrassed and we're going to be able to start fighting back. Second thing is you should be able to unbundle your bill. You should be able to have your student pick. Here are the things I'm going to use. And here are the things I'm not. That's put market force on because 98% of the people say, I'm not paying for the rock climbing wall. Guess what? Goodbye to the rock climbing wall. Won't be getting paid for. Now, you say to me, those are good ideas, but how do you get them to do it? Here's how you get them to do it. If they're unwilling to detail what they're spending their money on for us, and they're unwilling to let us unbundle our bill, they do not get to participate in the federal student loan or federal student grant program. That'll get their attention. Because if they're going to use taxpayer money and they're going to make you incur debt, the least they owe us is all the information so you can make an informed decision. Because in the end, that's going to be your debt. Now, I had student debt when I left school, and it took me 10 years to pay it off. Because I went to college and then law school, and I took debt in both places. And I remember the day Mary Pat and I paid the last of our student loans. It was a cause for huge celebration because it's a lot of money over 10 years. And some of you are going to be paying it back over even a longer period of time. And so they need to do that. So those are the 4 things I think we can do to help give you some options on your payment side and to help try to start controlling these costs a little bit. And it'll be good for everybody, for families and for young people who are going to school. All right. Let's go over here. Yes, sir. Here you go.
Thank you. Okay. Governor Christie, you stated that the war on drugs has been a failure, and to your point, we know that black people and white people use drugs at similar rates, yet black people, specifically black men, are incarcerated for drug crimes at an alarmingly higher rate than white men. How would a Christie administration help to prevent disproportionate application of drug laws in the United States?
I think it's an even bigger problem than disproportionate application. I think that we're missing the point here. Listen, if you're a drug dealer and you're selling this poison in our neighborhoods, there should always be a jail cell for you. If you're using violence in order to back up the drug trade, there should always be a jail cell for you. But we have a lot of folks who are addicts, who commit petty crimes, nonviolent crimes, and have a disease. And that disease is addiction. And we put them in jail, we don't treat them, and then we're shocked to find out that they come out of jail still addicted, and they continue the same cycle of crime in order to support their habit. So here's what we've done in New Jersey that I think is different and is starting to happen in other places of the country. But I think we were the first ones to do it. I advocated for and signed a law that said if you're a non-dealing, non-violent, first-time offender, you don't go to jail anymore. You go to mandatory inpatient treatment. Mandatory inpatient treatment. And what's happened in our state since then? We did that about 3 years ago. You have seen our crime rate go down 20% in those 3 years. You've seen our prison population go down 10%. And so what's happening now? I was able to announce this past Tuesday in my State of the State address that we are closing a state prison. Closing a state prison. Who's closing state prisons in this country? They're building new ones. We're closing one. And what are we doing with that closed state prison? We are now refabbing it, rebuilding it, and we are going to make it a full-time drug treatment facility for people who are in the criminal justice system. So if you're in jail and you're an addict, we're going to move you to this new facility, and it's going to be a certified drug treatment facility that's going to give you the tools you need when you get out to deal with your addiction. It's not perfect. It doesn't work for everybody, but it'll work for more people than it won't. And each one of those lives that we save, those folks go back to being better mothers or fathers or sons or daughters or sisters or brothers. And they become more productive members of our society. We also, in our budget this year, are going to spend an additional $134 million to create more beds in the private sector so that folks who are not in the criminal justice system but are addicted can get better treatment and more treatment. The war on drugs has been a failure because you can't fight this just by throwing people in jail. The violent folks, the drug dealers who are profiting from this, they go to jail. They deserve to go to jail. We got to get them off the streets. But I will tell you, my mother was addicted. My mother was addicted to nicotine. She's a smoker. My mother started smoking when she was 16 years old in 1948. Back then, no one thought there was anything wrong with it. In fact, it was the cool thing to do. And everybody, in the movies, on TV, everybody smoked. And so my mother did, but she got addicted. She couldn't quit. And I watched her over the years struggle like crazy. She tried everything, gum, the patches. She even tried hypnosis at one point, which was great for us because it mellowed her out a little bit. Took some of the edge off Mom, which we could use, but it didn't do anything for the smoking, so she stopped. And inevitably, she was diagnosed at 71 years old with lung cancer after 55 years of smoking. Now, when she was diagnosed, no one said to us, don't treat her because she's getting what she deserves. She made a choice. She knew smoking caused lung cancer. She got lung cancer. Don't treat her. Let her die. No one said that. Nor was I ashamed to tell people my mom has lung cancer. But what if my mom was addicted to heroin? Would I tell people? Would I openly seek treatment? Would people feel as if she deserved treatment? There's a stigma that's attached to this now that is destructive, because what it does is it drives people into the shadows. Not only the addicts, but their families. And you know, everybody in this room, I am confident, knows someone, family member, friend, business colleague, neighbor, who has an experience with drug addiction. And we need to get this out of the shadows. And you need a president who's going to talk about it and say treatment is the way for us to deal with these folks who are not violent and are not dealing. Here's the other reason I'm for this. It's because I'm pro-life. Now, if you're pro-life, I think you got to be pro-life for more than just the 9 months in the womb. In fact, the 9 months in the womb are the easy part. It's when they come out that they can do things that disappoint us. When they're in the womb, they're perfect. They come out, all of a sudden life gets a lot more complicated because people make bad choices. We're human. We're imperfect. God's made us imperfect. So for the 16-year-old girl who's laying on the floor of the county lockup addicted to heroin, her life is an individual gift from God as well. For the guy in his mid-40s who's addicted to prescription painkillers and who can't get out of bed in the morning or can't go to his job, his life is precious too. See, I think if we want our pro-life movement to be bigger and broader, we need to be talking about being pro-life for the whole life. The whole life, not just the 9 months in the womb. And that means through all the problems and difficulties that life places in front of us and trying to help people reclaim their lives. And that means not ending life artificially at the end of life through assisted suicide, but understanding that it is God that ends life, not human beings. And so those are all the reasons why I think we need to have major criminal justice reform. That's why I've advocated for it in New Jersey and done it, and we're seeing great results from it. And I think we need to do the same kind of thing across our entire country. Drug courts across the country, more treatment so that we can reclaim lives. Because every life's an individual gift from God, and it's not for us. It's not for us to say that some are disposable and some aren't. Because I can tell you this, everybody, there but for the grace of God go I. I've made bad choices in my life, and I'm sure some of you have in this room too. I'm just lucky it didn't involve drugs. And, you know, if it had, I would hope that there would be people who thought that my life was worth reclaiming and that I deserved the help. And so that's the kind of position I would take as president, the way I would talk about it. Thanks for bringing it up. All right. There is a gentleman in the back who the entire time I'm talking continues to have his hand up. He waves. He keeps going, like he knows I'm in the middle of an answer, but he continues to do it. This must mean there is something on his mind that is of such incredible importance that he wants to make sure I don't miss him. So I am not going to disappoint him. Even though I don't necessarily like to encourage that behavior, I'm going to call on you, sir, right back there. All right, so what do you got for me?
Well, I want to thank you for coming out, first of all.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
This is a follow-up to the previous question as far as the drugs go. Senator Sanders has marijuana and heroin, Schedule I drugs, right next to each other, wants to take marijuana off that list. You are against marijuana. You've came out and said the pot party ends in 2017 in Colorado.
Yes, it does.
But yet there is more death and crime because of pharmaceutical drugs. People becoming addicted to prescription drugs like Oxycontin, oxycodone. They're committing crimes to obtain these drugs, robbing pharmacies and stuff like that. My question is obviously you're against the marijuana, but yet why are you your state basically has a majority of the pharmaceutical industry in it, 17 of the big 20th.
We used to be America's medicine chest, less
well,
so now.
But my question, I guess, is why the hammer on marijuana?
Because it's illegal. How about we start with that? How about the country made the decision? How about the country made the decision through its elected officials to make it illegal? And this president has decided that he's going to pick which laws he wants to enforce. So since he got high when he was a kid, and he's got the guilt over that, he now thinks, well, why should I impose the law on people across the country if they choose something different? Well, see, I'm different. I think the law means something. Now, you don't agree with the marijuana laws? Go lobby Congress and get them changed. If Congress decides that they want to make marijuana a legal drug and they have a president who will sign it, that's the way our country works. But we're not a dictatorship. And this dictator in the White House shouldn't get to decide that in, Colorado, it's okay for them to have legal marijuana if they want. No, it's in the state of Colorado to violate federal law. The president has the absolute obligation to enforce the federal law. How about if I decide in New Jersey, and the voters in New Jersey decide, that we think heroin should be legal? So under your theory, have at it. Well, listen, what's the difference? By the way, but I'm going at your basic point. You just said to me, well, the people in Colorado voted. Well, let's let them vote to make heroin legal. Let's let them vote to make, cocaine legal. Let's let them vote to make any of that stuff legal. We have a system of laws. If you don't like them, change them. But when I take the oath of office in New Jersey, I swear to enforce the laws of the state of New Jersey. Not the laws I like, not the laws I agree with, the laws. And that's the same kind of oath the president takes. So I don't like this moral relativism, okay? Well, Oxycontin is bad and Percocet is bad. So, you know what? If you think they're bad, go to Congress and lobby for a law that has them banned. And if Congress bans Oxycontin and Percocet and the president signs it, and I'm the president, I'll enforce the law that they should be illegal. But we can't just pick and choose which laws we want to enforce based on what we like. Then we become a dictatorship. Then who's ever sitting in the White House gets to make the call. And so my view is marijuana is an illegal drug in this country, and we should not let any state be engaged in the recreational sale and use of marijuana. And so you're right. I went out to Boulder, Colorado during I guess it was the third debate, and I had a group of students who kind of yelled at me because they know my position on marijuana, and you can imagine that's not really popular with some college students. And they said, why don't you like pot? And I said, listen, man, get high while you can, because I'm coming. Get high while you can. Enjoy it now, man. I'm coming. So they're telling me I can take one more question, which means I will take two. And here's why. I want to remind my staff that I am still the boss. Now, you laugh about this, but do you know what it's like to run for president? I don't think anybody in the room has run for president. Here's what it's like to run for president. You are surrounded every day by people that are younger than you, and they tell you where to go and what to do every minute of the day. See, when I'm standing in here, in the middle of all of you, by this stool with that bottle of water, it is the only place that I am safe from the tyranny of the young. So when they say one, I say two. So I'm going to go to this gentleman right back there in the corner booth. He's going to bring you a microphone.
Illegal immigration is a big issue, but I'm very concerned about legal immigration as well, specifically H-1Bs and how I think they're being abused in this country to really kill the IT sector is what I'm specifically concerned about. What are your thoughts on H-1B abuses?
But listen, here's my view on H-1B and all the other things involving immigration. And it's very similar to my answer to my friend in the back on marijuana. Enforce the law. Stop the abuses. I mean, what people want more than anything else in this country is for the law to be enforced. They want to believe there's a level playing field that they can compete on. And that level playing field, the thing that creates that is our laws. So that everybody plays under the same rules. Doesn't mean everybody's going to do as well as everybody else. That's where talent and hard work and all the rest come in. But we got to enforce the law. So whether it's on the legal immigration side or the illegal immigration side, when those abuses happen, they should be stopped, no matter who's abusing it. Whether it's a local small business that's doing it, or whether it's one of our biggest corporations. The fact is that allowing that stuff to happen on immigration is what's causing everybody to be so angry about this. America is not an anti-immigrant country. Quite the opposite. All of us have come in our ancestry one way or the other, with very rare exception, from someplace else. What we're angry about is that people, the government, are not enforcing the rules, whether it's at the southern border, whether it's at airports with tourist visas or work visas or student visas, or whether it's with H-1B visas or other type of specialized visas that are given out. Because not only are we giving a lot of them out, but then we're allowing them to be abused for purposes that are just for profit. That's why one of the things I've talked about in my plan on immigration is to say that everyone has to use E-Verify. Now, this doesn't go to H-1B, but everyone has to use E-Verify, and if any business hires someone illegally, they get fined double whatever they made off of that employee. That's the kind of teeth we need to put into laws, because business is part of this problem, and they're part of the problem with the H-1B visa program, as you know. They're the ones pushing that because they want to get cheaper labor. And the fact is that I have no problem with companies making a profit. They just have to make it legally and not by twisting our laws, and that's the government's fault because we're letting them do it. I think if you come out of one thing this morning clear about me is I'm a former prosecutor. I believe in the law, and I believe in enforcing the law vigorously. And whether it's on H-1B visas or immigration at the border or through the airports, whether it's on marijuana, I am for enforcing the law because it gives people confidence in the fact that they got a shot to succeed, and that shot to succeed will be based on the greatness of their ideas and the depth of their work ethic, and not on getting somebody to game the law for you and give you an unfair advantage. I think that's what you're getting at, and that's the way I would fix it as president. Enforce the law and stop the messing around by giving people advantages because you're winking and nodding and looking the other way. That's whether it's selling marijuana or whether it's giving out H-1B visas. So that's what I would do to fix it. All right. Okay. I'm going to give one more adult question, then I got to give this guy a question too. So I'll give three. All right. So we'll go to that lady right back there because that seems like a very active booth back there. A very active booth. So I'll give you a question and then I'll get to you, buddy.
Good morning, Governor, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have been a nurse for 40 years, a family nurse practitioner for 16 years, and our health system is clearly broken. What is your plan, or what do you foresee we can do to get rid of some of the fraud, the overspending, all of those kinds of things?
Okay.
Because we need to provide care for people.
We sure do. And by the way, our system is still the best one because of folks like you and the folks who provide health care. We still provide health care, results of health care, in a very, very good way. But you're right that we have a bunch of problems. So I'll give you three things. First one is we got to get rid of Obamacare. It is a gross failure, right? An awful failure. And here's what I would do to replace it. I think each state should be responsible for coming up with a health care plan for their state. Here's why. How about the idea that whatever health plan that would work for Iowa and Iowa's challenges would work for New Jersey? Doesn't make any sense, right? Here's Iowa, this big, expansive agricultural state where a lot of the problem of access for care is distance and how far do you have to go to get to a specialist, whether it's a nurse, a physician, a hospital, to deal with the problem you have. In New Jersey, we are the most densely populated state in the country, right? So we have 8.9 million people stuffed into a little small place. We trip over a hospital every 4 miles in New Jersey, okay? Access for us is not about distance. Access for us is about cost exclusively and how much it costs to be able to access health care in our system. So why would the system that works for Iowa work for New Jersey? It wouldn't. So what I say in replacing Obamacare is each state will get 1 year to come up with their own plan on how to provide health care in their state. And I trust the governor of Iowa and the legislature in Iowa to come up with the right plan for Iowa. And the governor of New Jersey and the legislature of New Jersey to come up with the right plan. Not only because I think they know their state better and would have a better idea than anybody in Washington, D.C., but also if they make a mistake, you have a better chance of correcting that mistake with them than you do of anybody in Washington, D.C. One of the great phrases I love about democracy is the best system of government. Not because it doesn't make any mistakes, but it's the system that allows you to correct those mistakes most easily because you have access to the people who represent you. Secondly, I think we have to move away from the fee-for-service model in providing health care. I think if you look at places like the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic and others, they're starting to move towards more result-based pay for healthcare providers. I think there's a perverse incentive in fee-for-service. The more services you provide, the more money you make. And I think it causes folks to bill for more stuff than they may need to actually bill for, so they get more money. And because some of the reimbursement levels are much lower, they bill for multiple services to ultimately get to the number they want to get to. Third thing that I think is a problem is that we look at the model we have now for providing health care to folks. And one of the things that people don't talk enough about is our legal system. You know, one of the reasons that fee-for-service has gotten out of control, too, is that doctors and other healthcare practitioners are practicing defensive medicine. They're worried about getting sued. And their insurance is through the roof to protect them from malpractice coverage. And they figure, okay, if I order every test known to man, if something goes wrong here, then I can't be second-guessed for not ordering the right test because I ordered every one. But every one of those tests, as you know, has a cost attached to it, and it drives up the cost. So we need tort reform. I have no problem with people who have been the victim of some bad conduct by a doctor or a nurse being able to sue in court. But that's not what we have anymore. You see the commercials on TV all the time with lawyers trolling for patients, for clients rather, who are former patients. You had a bad result? Well, just because you had a bad result doesn't mean anybody did anything wrong. Sometimes you just can't fix something. Sometimes, despite the best efforts of a doctor or a nurse or a hospital, your particular disease, your particular accident, your particular problem can't be fixed. We need a tort system in this country that doesn't reward lawyers for trolling on television and force insurance companies and practitioners to pay, because what happens is that money comes from us ultimately anyway, in more tests and more things that practice defensive medicine. So those are the three things I would do to try to improve both cost and access. Let's let the states run these things. And by the way, it's a philosophical approach too. Our Constitution has a 10th Amendment that says if the powers are not directly spoken to in this document, it reverts to the states. Well, I've read the Constitution. I don't see health care anywhere in there. Federal government doesn't belong in it. It should be dealt with by the states. That's the way I would deal with it. All right?
What are you gonna do about the lunches? Because, okay, they were fine when Mrs. Bush was the first lady, but now that Mrs. Obama's the first lady, they've gone down. And I used to eat all the lunches, like Crispito and square pizza, and not gluten-free stuff.
Do you know, this is interesting. This is the second time this has been brought up to me in 2 days. It's true. Yesterday it was by a parent in Lamar's who brought up to me that she's tired of the school lunch program as it's been changed by Mrs. Obama. So now we have a parent and a student who's tired of this. Listen, here's the thing. The First Lady has no business being involved in this. Okay? I mean, really. She's no business being involved in it. She wants to give her opinions. That's fine. She can give her opinions about what people should have for breakfast or lunch or dinner. She's like any other American. She can give her opinions. But using the government to mandate her point of view on what people should be eating every day is none of her business. It just isn't. So I want people to eat more healthy. I've been trying to eat more healthy. We all should be trying to do that. It makes us better, live longer, better quality of life, all the rest of it. But in the end, it's your choice. And I think that this intervention into our school system is just another example of how the Obamas believe that they've got a better answer for everything than you do. That government should pick the winners and losers on everything from energy to defense, for God's sake, to school lunch. Doesn't the President of the United States have anything better to do than to be worrying about what you're eating for lunch at school? Let me just tell you something. I don't care. I don't care what you're eating for lunch every day. I really don't. I want you to eat whatever your mother wants you to eat and your father wants you to eat. Your mother and father should make that decision for you. And then they'll send you to school sometimes with a healthy lunch. And then you'll throw it out. And you'll go to school and you'll buy something that you really want to eat, right? I understand the way it works. My own kids do this. they had a system, and one of my kids, all of our children went to a Catholic elementary school called the Assumption School. And for a while, the Assumption School allowed the kids to get lunch and like charge it. And then we would get a bill. And they weren't billing like every week. They were billing like once every 2 months, right? So here's my wife every morning. Mary Pat would be up and making lunch for the kids and making really healthy stuff, right? And putting it in little Tupperware containers and all this stuff, like really healthy stuff for the kids, right? And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, we get this bill from the school for like 25 lunches. And Mary Pat's like, I'm making lunch every day. So she calls the principal and says, this must be a mistake because I send lunch with the kids every day. And they're like, well, all we know is that they charged it in 25 lunches, right? So then we call our kids and we're like, hey, what's going on? Now, there became kind of like a stonewalling effect among the kids. They're kind of like, okay, so what's our story going to be on this? But the great news is that our third child, Patrick, who's now 15, but at the time was 7 or 8, he was not in on the conspiracy with the 2 older kids. So we said, Patrick, are you buying lunch? And he goes, yeah. And we said, well, why are you buying lunch? Mom sends lunch with you. And he goes, well, I don't like it. And I said, well, do you eat both lunches? He goes, oh, no, I throw out the lunch Mom sends. And I buy and then I buy the lunch I like, right? So I know what you kids are up to, okay? But despite that, I don't care. I don't think the president should care what you're having for lunch. I don't think the First Lady of the United States should be concerned about what you're having for lunch. You know what? I trust your mom to decide what you're having for lunch. I trust your dad to decide that because we figured out what was going on eventually, and we lowered the hammer. We closed the charge account. Now, you either got to spend your own money or you got to eat what Mom sent with you to school. There are always ways for us to work this, but the government shouldn't be working it. Your parents should be working it. They're the ones responsible for you. I'll take care of my kids. You let your mom and dad take care of you. And let's let the government take care of our national security, protecting us from terrorism, and not worry about what the heck we're doing with you eating lunch at school. So if I'm president, back to whatever you want to eat, okay? I'm out of it. So I want to thank all of you for coming today. I appreciate it a great deal. 2 weeks, we'll end where we started. And I'll give it back to the senator. 2 weeks. And don't let anybody decide your vote but you. Okay? Don't listen to, well, who's ahead in the polls or who's behind, who's surging, who's falling. That's because these guys on TV got nothing else to talk about. Until you actually vote, they got nothing else to talk about. So they're going to speculate and all the rest of it. Don't get into that. Here's what I suggest and I hope you'll do. Give everybody a chance. Anybody you're interested in, give them a chance. Come and listen to them. In Iowa, you got that opportunity. You can see anybody you want to see in settings like this. Listen to them. Look in their eye. Take the measure of their character and decide whether the times are matched to them for being the next president. But please remember this. We can't make another mistake. This country needs to be cleaned up. And we need to take advantage of the opportunities that we're presented as Americans. And we need a president who knows how to get this done. So let's remember something. While this campaign has been very entertaining, believe me, I've been entertained too. I'm up on that stage. Think about it. We've got governors and former governors, senators and former senators. We've got business people, and we have a character. And of all these folks, right, all these folks all have something to offer. But let's be clear. We're not electing the entertainer-in-chief. It's not what we're doing. We're electing the commander-in-chief. We're electing the person who represents our country and our values to the rest of the world. That's who we're electing. And so I'm happy, very happy, to be able to put my fate in your hands. Whatever you decide, you decide. And I'm going to continue to talk to you as much as I can over the next 2 weeks to convince you that when I ask you, as I am right now, for your vote on caucus night, I want you to caucus for me on caucus night. I'm asking you to do that. But when I ask you, I hope that I can also have your trust and your confidence, and not just your vote. Because your vote gets me to the White House, but your trust and your confidence will help me to be a successful president. And this country is hungry for a successful presidency. We need it. We need to believe in our president again. We need to believe in our government again. We need to believe that they'll enforce the laws, whether we like them or not. They need to know that everyone's going to be treated in a way that allows your work ethic, your ingenuity, to be able to decide whether you're successful or not. That's the kind of government I want to run. That's the kind of government I have run in New Jersey, and that's the kind of government I will run as president if you give me the chance. So thank you for coming today. I appreciate it. Senator, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you for your introduction.
Governor, thank you for that message. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your passion for our country. And on February 1st, the people of Iowa have a chance to send a message. I think you've told them what message this country would like to see. And I think on behalf of all of us here in the Midwest, best wishes. God bless. Thank you.